flawed and has not served our national security interests. What if we wake up one day and realize that the terrorist threat What if someday it dawns on us that losing over 5,000 American military personnel in the Middle East since 9/11 is not a fair trade-off for the loss of nearly 3,000 American citizens, no matter how many Iraqi, Pakistani, and Afghan people are killed or displaced? What if we finally decided
Welcome on Second Thought. I'm William Wagener, taking my hat off for you people that tuned in, because tonight you're going to see what actually happened in Santa Ana courtroom, 11th floor in Judge Goethals' court today with the sentencing of the mass murderer, Scott Dekraai. It was a sobering room, and there wasn't anybody happy in that cat room. That courtroom today in Santa Ana, this was just this morning. Today's Friday, the 22nd of September, and I was down there filming this for you people. This is really sad, so if you have really sensitive children, you might want to send them out of the room.
Remain seated. Come to order. Superior Court is now in session.
In session on People versus Scott Dekraai. Appearances, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mike Murphy, Deputy Attorney General, on behalf of the people.
Good morning, Your Honor. Ron Jacob, Deputy Attorney General for the people.
Good morning, Scott Sanders, Assistant Public Defender, on behalf of Mr. Dekraai, who's present in custody and counsel table.
Sarah Ross on behalf of Mr. Dekraai.
This is the time and place set for sentencing. I've received a probation report, which I have read and considered along with a supplement from someone related to the second count. My normal practice with respect to sentencing is to let the defense speak first, then to hear from the people. During the people's presentation, if anyone here who would like to address the court pursuant to Marcy's law, we have done that several times, but I certainly would like to hear from anyone who is here who would like to address the court. And then I'm going to give the defense the last word. If Mr. Dekraai would like to speak, he can. If he does not want to speak, I will hold it against him. Mr. Sanders, is there anything you would like to say on behalf of your client before I hear from the people? Mr. Murphy, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think I'd just like to begin by offering the opportunity to the victim's family members to address the court. I know we do have several people who wish to do that. So if the court pleases, we can just begin that process.
Anyone who likes to speak, as you come forward, obviously we have some media present in the court, and I'm addressing the media right now. I have signed media orders this morning, and you know what you can do and what you can't do. As the individuals come forward and ask to speak to the court pursuant to Marcy's law, I'm going to ask each of you whether or not you have any objection to having the media take your photograph. If you don't want them to, it's okay.
Fine.
Everything you say, as you know, my court reporter needs to write down. It is part of the public record. So if you would start by spelling your name, if you're going to speak, and spelling your name, and then speaking slowly enough so I can hear it, and also so my reporter can transcribe it. Okay? Thank you. Thanks for being here. To all of you, thanks for the work.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name's Rooney Dashbach. This is my sister Lily Cosenza. We are the first and second children of our parents. Our little sister Michelle Dashbach Fast was one of the victims. So we have a big family. Everyone couldn't make it. We didn't know what the appropriate impact statement would be, but one of our sisters, who's not here, Laura, she put together a statement that we felt was collectively representing our family's feelings. So with that, we're going to each take a part of the reading and
Take
proceed.
as much time as you need, take a deep breath.
Thank you.
This is your opportunity.
So this is the impact statement of Laura Pitchford. It has been nearly 6 years since the death of my baby sister, Michelle Dashbach Fast. And these are her words, Laura's words. Michelle was an amazing person, selfless, funny, humble, loving, smart, interested in others, a wonderful mother, wife, daughter, sister, aunt, and friend. Michelle grew up in a peaceful, loving environment. Anger, revenge, and guns were not a part of it. The fact that Michelle died such a violent death is a horror that is very difficult to deal with. A horror that stays in one's thoughts and dreams forever. What was she thinking while she took cover in that salon, trying to escape the brutal death to come? I can only imagine that she was thinking of her 3 wonderful children and how she needed to survive for them. I have spent several sessions of therapy on Michelle's final 2 minutes of life. I had prayed that she was one of the first victims that day so that she would have had less time for fear and heartache. But as the few pieces we know of began to fall into place, we realized that she may have been one of the last. She not only knew what was coming, she had to witness the death of so many others. The loved ones of many in this courtroom. I finally realized that I had to find a way to live with these painful thoughts, since I will never get them out of my mind. The ripple effects have been significant and extensive. Michelle was the favorite aunt to 18 nieces and nephews. They were devastated and unprepared to deal with the completely senseless, sudden and violent death of their beautiful, funny, and supportive Michelle. They have worked through it, but for many it took a while. Their perspectives of life were forever altered. Another ripple effect had to do with family structure. Michelle's main job by choice in October of 2011 was to facilitate the smooth running of her family and to help the kids thrive. With the sudden loss of their mom, the kids also lost her unconditional love, her nurturing, and the warm nest she provided for them to return to each day. In that very first year, Patrick graduated from UC Berkeley. Laura finished her first year of UCLA, and Lisa got her driver's license. Michelle would have been so proud in her humble, quiet way. Birthdays, high school, college graduations, weddings, and new babies. I could write for days on the impact of her death has had on her children. She was there for their mother. She was their mother, their hero, and their champion of their causes. They struggled and survived because they were blessed with Michelle's strength. She prepared them well for life, and her spirit lives on in them.
Michelle's death killed our father. 4 months after Michelle died, my father, a healthy 87-year-old, died of a broken heart. He could not overcome his grief. He had lost his baby, his favorite, his dominoes partner, the person who most made him laugh, his loving daughter, and his heart just could not take it. During those 4 months, he went from being an outgoing, funny man who went to church and coffee each morning with his lifelong friends to becoming a shell of himself. He gave up on life, and his heart gave up on him. My mother, who learned of the shooting while watching the news in Northern California, lost her baby and then her husband. Immediately following the shooting, my oldest sister and her husband, that'd be Lily, were charged with the duty of picking up Michelle's son, Patrick, at Cal. Not knowing whether Michelle was dead or alive, they boarded the last plane on the day to Orange County. Lily will never forget the devastating feeling of sitting next to Michelle's son as he tried to process that his mom had been shot and that he may never see her or talk to her again. My older brother, that would be me, the only sibling that lived in the area, was charged with the duty of going to the salon to see if Michelle was there, and if so, hoping that she had survived. In his mind, he will forever see Michelle's car parked in the lot, praying that somehow she would come back. I just want to mention, too, that Michelle was a very simple woman. She got her hair cut twice a year by Karen Cropper. I think was her first time in the salon. She happened to be there for the 1 minute and 50 seconds that this horrific act took place. And although I didn't read it, that's not part of our reading, I just wanted to tell you that in addition to all this, the randomness of this event and the fact that if she'd made her appointment for 15 minutes earlier or later, she had no other connection to the salon, we wouldn't be standing here today. So that is an additional hard to come to grips with random thing that we'll never get over. My older sister Lisa, just a month before the shooting, had been diagnosed with breast cancer and was undergoing chemotherapy. Michelle had been up in Northern California to visit her just days before Michelle's death. Lisa sat with our parents at home during the time of uncertainty about Michelle, watching news updates, calling hospitals, calling family, supporting our mom and dad. That day, Lisa's focus was redirected from her chemo to helping our parents through the worst day of their lives. Lisa had thought her cancer was going to be the hardest battle of her life, only to be faced with the brutal death of her baby sister. My younger brother, who was very close to Michelle, spent October 12th in denial, pacing and praying that she was alive. To this day, he is not sure he has allowed himself to believe it. He misses Michelle so much that he finds it too difficult to even talk about her. On the day of Michelle's death, I was traveling with my husband. It was the first trip we were taking as empty nesters. My sister Lisa had the terrible job of calling to let me know that Michelle was dead. That call is forever painfully etched in my mind. Every trip I have taken since then has been tainted with the memory of Michelle's death and the fear and anxiety that I might get another terrible call. That day and every day since, I've been grieving not just the loss of my sister, but of my best friend. Michelle and I were very close. We chatted every day about life, about our kids who were the same ages, tennis, diets, our aging parents, the kids' sports, our love for each other. She was the first person I called with good news or bad. She was my rock. Michelle and I had a long list of places and things we were going to see and do when her youngest had graduated from high school and when she would have more time for herself. She was almost at that time of her life when she was robbed of the opportunity to fulfill those plans. She was robbed of so many things. As I reread this statement, I realize there is no possible way to put on paper all that has changed because of Michelle's death. Each of us, Lily, Rooney, Lisa, Mark, and I have spouses, children, grandchildren, in-laws, and friends who have been affected. It is absolutely impossible to relay what each and every one of them has suffered. But it is Michelle who suffered the most, dying long before her time, being robbed of her family, her kids, so many anticipated special memories that never came to pass. She should be here with us, enjoying the life she had ahead of her.
I just have a conclusion. Our family would like to express our appreciation to you, Judge Goethals, for the ethical, professional, and thoughtful manner in which you have had to make so many challenging decisions. Throughout this experience, we have spoken highly of you when reporting back to our mother, family, and friends. We have also appreciated the professionalism with which the state prosecutors and their staff have stepped in to handle this very mixed-up case that fell into their laps. To all the family members of the other victims we have met and or come to know, this has definitely been quite a profound shared experience. We have learned that we can have similar or differing opinions and still be respectful. We wish you as much peace as you can have under these circumstances. Finally, through these 6 years, we have yet to be told the complete story of what happened in the Salon Meritage on October 12, 2011. As many of the details and witness statements have not been disclosed in anticipation of a trial that will never take place. We feel strongly that for those who wish, we on behalf of our murdered loved ones are owed the opportunity to hear all that is known about their death. From the beginning, we have felt that we needed to be present for Michelle at her death, even after the fact, and understand for her sake those last 2 minutes of her life. Michelle and the other victims were deprived of one of life's most important moments, to be surrounded, held, and comforted by loving family members as death approached. Of all the many unexpected thoughts that have consumed us since Michelle's murder, the most painful and haunting has been to imagine Michelle's heartache with the knowledge that she would never have the opportunity to say goodbye to her children and tell them one last time that she loved them.
Spell your last names. I don't think we got it.
Our last name is Dashbach, D like David, A-S-C-H-B like boy, A-C-H. And I'll let her spell her Sicilian new name.
Cusenza, it's C-U-S-E-N-Z-A.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next. Mr. Wilson. That one, just Thank you.
My name is Paul Wilson, the husband of Christy Wilson. I have statements to direct to individuals. Your Honor, I would like to start Scott Dekraai, and if I could request that, prefer that he give me the respect and look at me as I speak with him.
All right, Mr. Usually I can hear you, Mr. Wilson. Your voice is so soft.
Yeah, today's a little different for me. It's a tough day. On October 11th in 2011, I arrived home having dinner with my two closest friends. Christy met me at the door with her normal, happy-go-lucky self. She asked me to come and look at the new moon. She had this thing for the moon, tracking the moons, and she told me it was the forgiving moon that night. I asked her if I could simply get caught up on some ESPN while she watched and looked at the moon and relaxed. And being Christy, it was not a problem. She said, "Enjoy yourself, sweetie." I fell asleep before she got back in. October 12th, 2011. The sun was out early, and it was a great opportunity for me to catch up with Christy. We enjoyed coffee together and chatted, and at one point I asked her, "Sweetie, how was the moon last night?" Her reply was, "It was so beautiful, Paul." I sat and I thought to myself how great life is and how we are so blessed with our kids, our grandbaby, our house, our family, and our friends. "Paul," she said, I said to myself, "I have nothing to ask forgiveness for or anybody to forgive." She then looked at me and said, "I'm so thankful and I'm so happy." I kissed her goodbye as I left to go to the house. As I left the house to go to the same hair salon for my appointment that she would be killed at, along with 7 other beautiful souls by this coward. He made sure he killed violently and without remorse. He also was very cowardly as he wore body armor and he failed to take his own life. That was a day I will never forget. It's changed the course of my life that Christy and I had worked so hard and we're so proud of. This selfish coward took less than 2 minutes to change the course of 26 years of my life with her. This coward knew my children. He had been to my house for salon functions, and yet none of that mattered. He was intent on killing. I'm sorry, Paul. Since that day, I have not been. Since that day, I've had to bear the burden of shouldering this for my entire family. Telling your children they will never see their mom they love so much again is absolutely the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my entire life. Telling your son his mother is with him while he battles cancer. Listening to your daughter tell you on the day of her wedding that she never thought she would have to do this without her mother. Our youngest son receiving his college scholarship to play baseball and then graduating and saying to me, I wish my mom was here to see me do this. It's so gut-wrenching, especially because this coward is still allowed to breathe the same air that I do in this courtroom. Scott Dekraai, you are a coward, a convicted mass murderer. You are someone that has no love in their life, nobody that cares what or where you go from here or when you die. Just a large group that prefers you die sooner than later, and that you die in a tiny prison cell, lonely and afraid. I can only hope that your years in prison are rough, and that you are constantly harassed, and that your sick and demented mind does not allow you one moment of peace. I hope that you find hatred staring back at you each and every moment you are allowed to stay alive in prison. Scott Dekraai, you deserve nothing. You have taken so much from me and my family. You have taken so much from these families. You deserve nothing.
Deserve nothing.
I will leave this courthouse today with some closure. Closure meaning that I have to come back here and look at you sitting in that chair, knowing that I don't have to mentally prepare for days, stomach the notion that such a horrible and even evil person is still alive, and Christy was such a loving, wonderful person, was killed at your hands. I hope this also some point find some closure for the other families and victims that have had to burden so much over the past 6 years. I was blessed to have Christy for 26 years of my life. She brought me so much happiness and taught me to love life. I hope you guys, the families, can find memories in your loved ones after today, because they will always be with us. They will always be in our hearts. And we have a group of very special guardian angels. Judge Goethals, I've been in your courtroom now for 6 years. I want to thank you for always allowing me to speak and giving me the opportunity to represent Christy. You have presided over this trial with fairness and compassion, and I feel you always looked at the true facts, regardless of public opinion. This decision is the right decision. It allows the grieving families and victims the opportunity to move forward with some closure. Thank you for listening to the families and hearing the pain in our hearts and voices, and putting an end to this madness that has only been extended by the incompetence of our current district attorney and the Orange County Sheriff. Mr. Sanders, I've also known you for the last 6 years, and I commend you on your due diligence and your ability to seek the truth regardless of the people involved. I believe you know the person you have sat next to for the last 6 years is nothing more than a cowardly murderer, without a conscience and without remorse for the savage crimes he committed. I do feel you have compassion for the families and victims, which you have expressed to us many times. I only wish the Orange County DA had the same leadership, the same pursuit to do the job of prosecuting the largest mass murder in Orange County history correctly. I wish they had the integrity not to cheat and to prosecute by the laws they are held to. I wish they had the honesty to tell the families the truth. Instead, they betrayed us. Mr. Sanders, you played for the wrong team. Your Honor, I thank you very much. I thank the court. I'm very thankful this is the last time I have to come stand before you. Thank you.
Well, that was husband of one of the victims. Before he got up to speak, you notice the prior relatives of their victim, Scott Dekraai, never even looked at him. Paul Wilson called him out and I said, "Look at me, you look at me." And after you looked at him for a while, you heard the crowd make a commotion. You may not have heard Scott say, "I'm sorry, Paul." Sorry means nothing. He was deeply in love with his wife. They had 3 children. The youngest was still in high school. The oldest had just given him a grandchild. I mean, I can understand you're angry with your ex-wife because she won't agree to the husband having 100% custody of their only child. Scott Dekraai has 1 child. Now that child has a dead mother and a father who's a murderer. And I would have liked to have asked Scott, when you were thinking of going in there with 3 guns and body armor, did it ever occur to you, you're not just going to go pick up your son wherever he is and just go to Santa Monica and live in peace after you kill their mother? You're not going to get away. So your percent of time, Scott Dekraai, is going to go from 50% custody to 0. And today he's locked up. Within a few days or a week, he'll be transferred to Pelican Bay or Folsom Prison. And Pelican Bay is a particularly nasty place. And if they stick him in maximum security underground, he'll never see the sun again for the rest of his life. Did you think about that, Scott? I don't think he ever gave it a thought. So here's the interview I did yesterday before today's event on the 22nd, Friday, September 2017. On Thursday, I went to Paul Wilson's home in Seal Beach, and he had some enlightening comments. There's a shot of his wife. Yeah, you look pretty young in there. When she was a lot younger, and he was a lot younger. How many years ago was that? 20 years ago?
Let's see, Kylan's 28.
Most of the people that were killed at the salon right there.
There's one.
In the upper left corner, that's who?
Victoria Buzo.
Victoria Buzo. And then who?
Christy.
Christy.
Randy.
Randy.
Michelle next to Randy.
Michelle. And who's the 2 gals on the far right?
Where? Over here?
On the far right, yeah, right there.
That's Irma, who now owns the salon. She owns Salon Meritage now. I forget that girl's name.
My name is Paul Wilson. Today's date is September 21st, 2017. The day it happened, I was at my office. I had actually been at the hair salon 2 hours prior to that. I saw everybody come to work, said hello, good morning to everybody. I went to my office. I got a call from my daughter, who was driving on her way to work, and she passes past the salon, and there was obviously a huge amount of police traffic and helicopters in the sky, and she called me and said, you know, what's going on? Have you heard anything that's going on at Mom's salon? I said, I haven't heard anything, but you know, the salon is on PCH. Let's, usually there's an accident, let's call her, or let me call her. So I attempted to dial her number, and I called 6 or 7 times and didn't get an answer, which is pretty rare because usually when I call that many times, she'll pick it up and say she's busy. I didn't get a response, so I found that a little odd. I had set my phone down on my desk, and it immediately rang with a number that I didn't recognize. And I answered it,
it was the gentleman that cuts my hair at the salon calling me from the bathroom. He was in there with a couple other people. He had grabbed their phone. He told me I needed to get down there right away. And I said to him, Gordon, you have to tell me that Christy's okay. And he said, I can't do that, Paul. And he hung up the phone.
How did you feel in the pit of your gut at that second?
I knew something very bad was going on. I knew something bad was going on. I felt it in my gut, in my stomach. In fact, I was in the city of Commerce and I had to drive to Seal Beach. So, I mean, I didn't stop at a red light. I turned my flashers on the freeway. I was honking my horn. I really wanted somebody to pull me over, some law enforcement to pull me over, because I could feel my hands cramping up and, you know, anxiety was taking over. I just had this really bad feeling. Nobody pulled me over. I made it as far as the transition to the 605, where the 7th Street and the 405 split. And my mom was calling me, so I pulled over, and she said, you know, there's been a shooting at the hair salon. We don't think Christy was there yet. We don't think she was at work yet. And I felt a little bit of relief. And I continued to drive to the salon. Well, by that time, you couldn't get within a couple blocks of it. So I parked my car and I started to run towards the salon. We have a number of friends that are Long Beach police officers, and one of them happened to be arriving on scene and saw me, and he picked me up and, you know, took me,
What was his name?
Jack Ponce.
Jack Ponce. Is he still on the police department?
He's retired now.
Okay.
He's retired. He's still a good friend of mine.
And he picked you up and he took you right to the...
He took me behind the barricades, parked his car, told the police who I was and who he was, and they said, okay, well, would you take him back? That we're staging family at the church behind the salon. And as we started to walk, you know, I looked to my left towards the salon, and I saw her Escalade sitting in the parking lot. And I knew right then that this was not gonna turn out the way I wanted it to. The minute I arrived at the church, I wanted to vomit. I couldn't stand on my feet. I couldn't catch my breath. I knew something bad had happened.
Did you go in with the officer? Or did you wait till they told you to come in? Did you go in immediately?
Into where?
Into the hair salon?
Oh, we weren't allowed to go anywhere near the hair salon. Nowhere near it. And it was, I mean, they had, by the time I was there probably 20 to 25 minutes after the incident. I mean, it was pretty contained and wrapped up. Like I said, they walked us across the street, down the street to the church. And that's where, you know, the Red Cross had set up and everything. And they were bringing the family members to there. And at that point, I had just, the only thing I knew for certain was that there was a shooting and that Christy was there. I did learn a couple hours later that there were people that survived, but those people that survived were taken in a bus to get debriefed by the police department on what had happened. So I had no access to them to find out if she was one of them or if she was indeed a victim. I was hoping, but you know, sometimes your gut feeling kind of takes over, and I didn't have a good feeling about it. You know, especially when I learned that it was him and it was Michelle, because Christy was really good friends with Michelle. They went to high school together. They worked together in the hair business for the last 20 plus years. You know, I watched Michelle's children grow up. I've known Michelle since I've been with Christy.
Well, you knew Dekraai then.
I knew Scott very well.
Did you ever think it could come to this?
I knew he was a whack job.
You knew he was a whack.
Yeah, it wasn't liked by anybody in the salon. I mean, you know, we had some salon functions at our house, some gatherings, and he'd been over to the house. We'd been out to dinner with him at salon functions. That salon was very close. Randy and Sandy were awesome owners. You know, it was a family there. It definitely was a family. They did a lot of things together, and he was at a number of them.
And how many years before did you conclude he was always marbles?
The minute I met him, there was,
Really?
yeah, there was just, and you know, I never really cared for him. I don't think anybody really did. I think we put up with him and allowed him to come in simply due to Michelle. Michelle was a great person. It's a lot of fun, a great mother, and
How many children did they have?
they just had the one.
And you had how many children?
How many children do I have?
Yes.
I have 3 children.
How old are your children?
My daughter is the oldest. She'll be 28 this October. My middle son Connor is 25 this October. 26, I'm sorry, this October. And our youngest Kason is 23, and he just graduated college. He's been away at North Carolina playing baseball.
So he was still a teenager.
He was a senior. It was his senior year in high school.
Which one of your children do you think this hit hardest that affected them in their progress in life?
I think Connor, definitely. Connor was the closest to Christy because, you know, Kylan was older and she didn't live at home. Kason was there at home with us, but he was always off playing baseball. He had played travel ball and high school ball and practice and working out. Connor was home a lot with Christy. You know, we had a granddaughter when this happened that was 2 years old, and Christy had really pretty much kind of stopped working. I mean, she kept her core group of people, and it was, you know, about 2 days a week she would go in. And she would spend that time at home with the grandbaby and with Connor. And I think Connor really feels it the most, and he misses his mom a lot, and I think it's affected him.
Isn't really anything you can do for that, is there?
No. But then again, you know, sometimes I look at Connor, and he's such a happy kid because he has the mentality that he's going to live for today. Tomorrow doesn't matter. And he's got his friends around him, and if he's good today and he's loved and he's happy, it's all that matters to him today. And he'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes.
You and your wife were married what year?
We were married August 8/6/88. So August 6, 1988.
And this event happened in October
2011.
11. So you were married over 20 years.
It's almost 26 years.
Probably thought when this happened, before this happened, that life was just golden years now, wonderful things, and you two can kick back and enjoy life.
Sure. I'll tell you a story, and I'll be sharing this also tomorrow. But you know, the night before it happened, on the 11th, I do a dinner with some of my high school friends. We do it every year. They're my 2 closest buddies, and I did a dinner with them. And I came home, and you know, Christy said to me, you know, can we grab a glass of wine and go out in the backyard because it's a new moon. And it's called the forgiving moon. And she used to follow the moon phases, and she just wanted to go out and just relax and enjoy looking at the new moon. And I said to her, well, you know, sweetie, why don't you go do that, and let me I'd like to get caught up on some ESPN real quick, and you know, we can chat when all that. So I had fallen asleep and went to bed. She woke me up and went to bed. And the next day, the day of the shooting, because I was getting a haircut, we had some time to have coffee together in the morning. And you know, I had somewhat jokingly asked her, you know, hey, "Sweetie, how was your, how was your new moon last night?" And she said to me, and these are her exact words, she said to me, it was really great, Paul. The moon was beautiful, and I just sat there and I thought about how blessed we are with our kids and our home and our life, our friends and our family. And life is so good that I don't have anybody to forgive or anything to ask forgiveness for. I'm so happy. I gave her a kiss goodbye and I left to go get a haircut. Those are the last words I said to her. So, yeah, we were having grandchildren, and the home that we have, I still have it. My daughter is raising our grandchildren in it, but it's a family home. Christy's mom and dad bought that home in 1966. They raised Christy and her sisters in that home. We bought it from her parents. We raised our kids in that home. And now my daughter's there raising our grandchildren in that home. There's a lot of love in that house.
So, will tomorrow finally put this to rest for you? Will you be able to move beyond, start again in your life after the murder?
Yeah, I think I will. I mean, people ask me all the time about closure, and closure's a funny thing. I don't think in something like this you ever get definite closure. I mean, it's a tragic thing that happened. What tomorrow will allow me to do is to know that I don't have to go to court anymore. I don't have to look at Scott Dekraai and that cowardly person that he is. I don't have to listen or tolerate these incompetent district attorneys and sheriffs and police people. I don't have to listen to that anymore.
How many times have you been to court?
It's funny you asked me that. I got asked this a couple weeks ago. In 6 years, if I total it up, I probably have spent 2 years of my life sitting in that courtroom. And the thing about going to court is, and this is why I haven't really allowed any of my family or Christy's family, especially my children, to go to court, because that process of having to watch him walk in and walk out and watch him sit there and listen to the things that are said, it's exhausting and draining. It rips my soul out.
Did he ever express any regret?
He said I'm sorry a couple times, but it's not regret. He can't say sorry for that. It doesn't help me one bit. It doesn't do anything for me. You could say you're sorry all you want. He walked through that salon and he killed violently. He killed without remorse.
Do you have any reason in your mind that Scott did this? Does it come down to one specific incident that was too much?
Well, yeah, that day he got a phone call from his attorney that said that, he was in a custody battle with Michelle for 100% custody of that child.
They each wanted, or just he?
Just he. He
had to have the child 100%.
Yes, the standing order at that time was 50-50. He already had 50-50. That was the standing order. And, because of our great system that we have in place, you have a dirtbag lawyer, just because this guy can write a check, taking his money and walking into a courtroom, and you have some idiotic judge sitting on that bench hearing this case, instead of stepping up and saying, this is ridiculous, get out of my courtroom. We're not doing this anymore. It went on and on and on. And that day he learned that the order was going to say as it was, a standing order of 50-50. And that's what it is.
And he snapped.
He snapped.
Do you think he intended to kill everybody when he went there, or
I think he went there to kill
just his wife?
and Christie. Christie had written a letter to the judge about 2 weeks prior to that, that defending Michelle as a mother and stating what she knew about Scott. You know, this is wide open, and this shouldn't have happened because, you know, the guns that he used at the salon that day, those guns had been removed from him twice, taken out of his hand by law enforcement twice. He was at home with Michelle and the kids, and he threatened to shoot himself. They were having an argument. He threatened to harm himself with that weapon. Seal Beach police came. They took the weapons. They might have, and I'm not sure, but they might have put him on a 5150 at that time.
And that was in 2010?
I'm not sure exactly the year of that, but it had to be pretty close to that.
Wouldn't have been more
No, actually it had to have been earlier than that, because that's when they were still together.
2008.
Probably around there, yeah.
2008. Okay.
So he had those removed from him then, and then he also had an incident with his mother and his stepfather, who he was living with at the time after the divorce, and he beat the heck out of his stepfather for no apparent reason, and he brandished the weapon. They called the police. Long Beach police came. I think they actually took him in, and they removed the guns. But because in either incident nobody put a restraining order in place against him, once a time period, and I don't know what, it's either 42 or 72 hours goes by and nobody has put a restraining order in, he was able to retain his weapons. Just as easy as that. Walk in and ask for his weapons back. They hand him the guns and he takes them back.
Scott was a tugboat captain, wasn't he?
Yes.
Was he a tugboat captain when you first met him?
He worked on a tugboat. I don't know about him being a captain. I know his job at the time was on a tugboat. That's how he met Michelle.
How would he meet her?
Well, that's at the time when he met her. She was driving down to the docks and meeting him.
Did Scott's wife ever express to you after the divorce that she was deathly afraid?
Oh, many times. Many times. Not only to me, to Christy, to the whole salon. Many times. You know, in fact, when Michelle came to work that day, like I said, I was getting my hair cut. Michelle had brought in some leftover food from the dinner she had cooked the night before for her kids. And she was bringing it in, and she said to Gordon, she said, you know, Scott called me this morning, and he wanted me to meet him for coffee. And Gordon turned real quick and said, you know, you shouldn't be meeting that guy anywhere. And she said, yeah, I told him that I can't meet him. So she was definitely afraid of him. That whole salon, you know, it's not a joke now, but there was a running joke prior to this, was that, you know, Michelle, you better be careful because he's going to catch you someday and shoot you. And it turned out to be truthful.
Who started that joke?
I can't remember. You know, it's a hair salon. It just was, you know, it's like a workplace, you know, kind of. But that just goes to show that, I mean, many people knew that this guy was not right and that Michelle was definitely afraid of him.
You mentioned earlier that the police failed in doing their job. Tony Rackauckus failed. How did Tony fail? And Tony Rackauckus has been DA for
20 years.
23 years or something.
20 plus, absolutely, yeah.
What could have Tony done different?
Tony could have just played by the rules and prosecuted this case as it was. It's very black and white, very simple case to prosecute.
And
I mean, Tony's a horrible lawyer, as we all saw with the Kelly Thomas case. He probably could have prosecuted this case himself just by the rules and won. It was so black and white. It was so done.
You mean got a
Death penalty case.
Death penalty,
Conviction, prosecution, of course. But Tony doesn't play by the rules. It's not in his bag of tricks. So,
Trace the words, bag of tricks.
yeah.
Do you think Tony enjoys cheating the system?
I think he does enjoy cheating the system because Tony, it allows Tony to get the results that Tony wants. And, you know, I've had numerous meetings with Tony Rackauckas, private meetings, him and I in his office with Dan Wagener and Scott Simmons, who were the prosecutors at the time the DA had the case. There's one way to do things, and that's Tony's way. And you listen to what Tony has to say, and he doesn't give two shits about what you have to say. And it's apparent. He lets you know that. He has no interest in what you're saying. He's a rare breed, Tony Rackauckas is. And in his egotistical mind, there's no rules for Tony Rackauckas.
Would you say Tony Rackauckas is a psychopath?
I wouldn't say that, but I think some people would.
If Tony Rackauckas had been in charge of the Gambino crime family, do you think he would have fit right in? If he had said it,
You mean he's not part of that family? I thought he was part of that family. I think he would fit right in. Yeah, I do. I think he'd fit right in. Tony thinks there are no rules. Tony thinks he's above the law that he's supposed to uphold. He doesn't believe that he's part of that. He's above that.
Don't most attorneys think they're above the law to some degree?
I guess they would. I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I haven't had much exposure to lawyers or this justice system, as we call it, until this happened. But I've had a lot of exposure now, and I can tell you there's a lot of thugs, and it's a broken system.
A lot of thugs in the justice system.
Absolutely.
Supposedly upholding the law. If there was something you could do to get Tony Rackauckas out of office that wouldn't cost you another life, would you do it?
What is that? Go a little deeper. I don't understand what you mean by that.
If, say, somebody like Mr. Spitzer was running for DA against Tony, and you knew your endorsement of Spitzer.
I've already endorsed Todd Spitzer. I've done his commercials. He just launched a YouTube commercial, which I'm in. I support Todd Spitzer for a number of reasons, but I'll give you two of the main reasons. One is that Todd is a huge victims advocate. Huge. Todd has given me an opportunity many times to tell my story, to keep Christy's name out there. So it's just not about Scott Dekraai, to talk about the victims of Scott Dekraai. And secondly, Todd doesn't like Tony Rackauckas. And I think Todd's the guy that can bring Tony down. And I'm going to support Todd Spitzer. He got a big endorsement yesterday from the guy that was thinking about throwing his hat in and running, the law professor at Chapman, Mario, can't remember his name, but he announced yesterday that he was not going to run and that he was backing and supporting Todd Spitzer.
That is one very unhappy Paul Wilson. The only thing he's happy about is he will not have to look at Scott Dekraai's face in a courtroom again. You heard in his victims, and we're going to go back to the other family of the other victims, their final statements to the mass murderer, Scott Dekraai, in just a minute. But what he was angry at the DA about, and he spoke about it this morning that happened, and that interview you saw was at his home in Seal Beach yesterday. What he's angry about is the DA was operating such a crooked prosecution racket that he was cheating. He should lose his bar card, and Tony Rackauckas should be indicted for misprision of felonies, many of them. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Brady violations. Brady violations is withholding evidence and claiming we don't have any evidence to give the defense. I'm sorry, we lost it or we just never gathered it. And he was caught. Tony Rackauckas, the DA of Orange County, needs to go someplace else and soak his head in turpentine. He's bad. And as you heard Paul explain, when you're talking to Tony Rackauckas, he doesn't care what you say. You're the victim, and he doesn't care what you say. He isn't listening, and he ain't going to do anything you ask. He's got one modality. Everybody's a first-degree murderer. That's why we had that guy Wilkins I played here a few weeks ago, and Gar Myers reported, because he'd been following the Wilkins case, he was a thief. This other guy, not Scott Dekraai. Wilkins, he stole a stove that was going to be installed in some new development. A really expensive, nice stove. He's a thief, he's probably a liar, a cheater, but he wasn't a murderer. But in Tony Rackauckas' mind, they faked evidence, twisted the truth, tore up reports, made new reports to try to get him convicted of first-degree murder. They did, and the Supreme Court undid it, sent it back for a retrial, and Tony Rackauckas puts it on schedule for first-degree murder again. How crazy is this? Tony Rackauckas is just wasting taxpayers' money. The crooked Supreme Court of California already said, we're not going to allow this to go down as first-degree murder. Clearly this was an accident. At best, you've got voluntary manslaughter, because he voluntarily stole the stove, which he didn't keep control of on the freeway, and it ended up causing an accident, several accidents. And unfortunately, a good police officer died, but it wasn't premeditated murder. That's what's wrong with Tony. Tony the Rat has got screws loose in his head. He should have been indicted years ago when Mike Corona, the sheriff, and his bosom buddy went to prison at Club Fed for 66 months. And Mike Corona is getting towards the end of his federal prison term. He's not going to ever be sheriff again. I doubt if the sheriff, Mike Corona, ex-sheriff Mike Corona, will ever be allowed to own a weapon again, because he was convicted of a serious felony and was charged with over 100 other felonies. They didn't prosecute him. And here's what I'm getting to. Why didn't they prosecute Mike Corona for the other felonies? Probably, my best guess is to go into those would drag Tony Rackauckas, the DA, in as an accessory. You can't have that. How can Tony the Rat continue to let the snitches out of jail and give them special privileges if they tell the correct lie? That's, so this became known as a snitch scandal. It wasn't a snitch scandal. It was about 8 innocent people being murdered in a hair salon by somebody who had snapped, who obviously had deep emotional problems. And as Paul pointed out, he had had his guns taken away before by the cops, but nobody put a restraining order on him. If they'd got a restraining order on him within 48 hours, the cops would have been able to legally say, no, we're not giving you your guns back until the restraining order is removed. I guess he was even threatening to kill himself. But I really would like to know what went into Scott Dekraai's mind. How could he think that killing these people was going to get him 100% custody? Was it, if I can't have my son 100%, then nobody's going to have him? Well, he's the one that's now got 0%. So, Scott, if you ever see this, which I doubt, you made the biggest mistake, and you had a better shot. You had 50% custody, Scott. Most non-custodial dads would be happy, tickled pink to have 50% custody. In reality, that almost never happens. But you had it, and you blew it. I can only think that you're a very egotistical, self-centered, selfish person, because you had the right deal. So Tony Rackauckas has now got a guy named Spitzer. Todd Spitzer worked under Tony and quit because he saw crooked things Tony was doing. And I spoke with Mr. Spitzer this Friday morning, the 22nd, before we went into the courtroom where Judge Goethals was holding the sentencing of Scott Dekraai. And he kind of chuckled, and we talked about the feds investigating the judges there, many of them are corrupt in Orange County, and the DAs that are corrupt. And he kind of chuckled and said, well, that ain't going to happen. They're not going to take out any DAs. I said, well, maybe not the local FBI office of Orange County. We know they're tampered with and they've been corrupted. That I've known since Orly Tates went in there and tried to give them information, and Linda Cater went in and tried to give them information. Honest to God, I think Tony Rakaukas is connected to the crime syndicate. I mean, the 5 families, you know, the Gambinos and all the rest from New York City. He's their boy that keeps things under control, Orange County. That would explain why the murder of Andrea Nelson was written off by sheriff/coroner Mike Corona, who went to prison for other things, but he wrote this off as accidental overdose, self-induced cocaine overdose. It wasn't. It clearly wasn't. I investigated that very thoroughly. That was a murder. It was a snuff film made from it. But they don't want to hear that. And that's what interested me. Nobody wanted to hear it. And when that whole county is so corrupt. Even the elections are corrupt. I don't believe Mike Corona actually won re-election right before he was indicted. I think the votes were rigged, just as they were when this other guy, Damon Dunn, came and ran for Secretary of State or something as a Democrat, or I'm sorry, as a Republican, when he'd been Democrat all his voting life and was still a registered Democrat in Florida and suddenly running as a Republican. And I looked at his signatures and I went to the elections office in Orange County. I called him first, said, can I have an appointment? I want to show you that I went and checked his signatures. Some of these people are dead. Some of these people say they never signed anything for any candidate. And they don't know how their name got on Damon Dunn's nomination papers. They didn't want to hear anything about it. They didn't want to look into corruption. That county needs a serious rectal injection of truth. You need to flush the crap out of that county. And Tony Rakaukas needs to go to Pelican Bay right along with Scott Dekraai, in my humble opinion. Because had he played it straight and followed the rules of their bark-hearted criminal court system, had he just followed the rules in all the cases, Scott Dekraai would have been convicted 2-3 years ago and put on death row 2-3 years ago and saved Paul Wilson and all those other victims' families coming back to court again and again for 6 years for this hearing. The snitch says this, the snitch says that. Who cares? He already admitted he killed him. Anyway, I got some more footage for you. Only place on the Central Coast you're going to see this or hear this. I thought you should have a chance, because we had some horrible murders here in Santa Barbara. The ones I can't talk about are the kids who were taken by foster care and ended up dead in Santa Barbara, because that's sealed. So I can't give you names, dates, places, because they were transferred out of the county. But we'll go back to Scott Dekraai's victims speaking this morning.
I forgot to ask you that he had been photographed before. As soon as you tell me who you are, spell your name for me.
Gallego, last name Gallego, Gallego. I was an employee at Salon Meritage and there on that day. And I carry a photo of our last prisons everywhere I go, and it's on my station. I stand here today because of the light you took from the bathroom door that I barricaded myself in, along with Lisa. That life was my best friend, Laura. I want you to know that I'm haunted by the whisper of her last breath. She was not alone that moment, because I was just on the other side of that door. In minutes before, the screams and the gunshots that still ring in my ears, sounds that I cannot get out of my head. I struggled to get out of the bathroom while Laura was lying there on the other side of that door. Made it so difficult. My very next goal was to make sure that Victoria was outside when you came in, having a smoke. She was not. Again, I found my best friend. Lying in a pool of blood. You have succeeded to take two of the most important people in a matter of minutes. As it wasn't bad enough, I had to witness the killings of Michelle and Christy before I took cover in the restroom. Moving from where Victoria lies, Hattie reaches up to me for help, and I stand there frozen looking at her. Because it wasn't registering what's just happened. And Sandy screams out my attention, and my heart still aches at the expression on her face. She stands over Randy's body, telling me that they're all dead. They meant nothing to you, but they were all that I had. That was my family, the family that you tore apart. Salon Meritage was a safe place, a place where we put a smile on people's faces. That same safety and happiness that pushed you to the edge because we provided something to Michelle that you couldn't. So many people's lives changed that day, not just mine, and not just the people in this room. For the last 6 years, I worked very hard to rebuild my life, one in which you had no regard for. I struggled every day. I hope today that we could close the chapters of this book that no one wanted to read. And I am hopeful for a future of much more laughter and smiles. A future where dark clouds that hover over is removed. Dark cloud that you created due to not being able to deal with your own dark clouds. I live for the day that Joe doesn't have to wake me from a nightmare and wipe my tears. Look around this room. These are the people's lives that you have changed forever. Remember the faces. Remember these faces and the faces of Michelle, Christy, Randy, and of course, Victoria and Laura. These faces, I hope these faces haunt you as the images that you have left haunt me the rest of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Renee Fournier Hudson. I'm sorry. Hate is what I feel when I look at you. I hate that I won't make any new memories with my sister, and I hate my children won't get any memories with their beautiful aunt. I hate that you took her away from us. From the first time I met you, I hated the way you were so jealous of my sister. Your intimidation was so pathetic. I knew my sister deserved better. I want you in general population. I want you to feel scared like my sister and her friends and coworkers had to feel when you chose to walk into that salon and murder them. I want the worst for you each and every day. No more puppet master from you. I hate you for taking away my sister from her 3 innocent kids and making my niece a parent before she wanted to be. I hate you for having no respect for life, that you left my nephew with no mother and a murderer as a father. But what I do love is that my nephew has all of my beautiful sister, and thank God, none of you.
My name's Chelsea Huff. I'm Michelle Fournier's daughter. And I'd prefer if you didn't look at me, please. Thanks. I miss my mom every day. I didn't know the effect that this kind of tragedy would have on my life, on the life of others. I remember Salon Meritage as being a family. I grew up there. I remember going there after school. I remember all the joy, the laughter that was there. And I know it's not there anymore. It's still slowly becoming a wonderful place again, but we can't take back that day. And I miss everyone so much. And I'm just glad that my little brother is with me and he's happy and he doesn't have to deal with the abuse and the meanness that his father was and the things that...
No, it's fine. I wasn't going to speak, but I wanted to get up and thank you. I think you've done a great job. I think you made the right decision. I've been struggling with what to say to you. And the truth is, I have nothing to say to you. You're absolutely worthless and not worth my time. What you did to everybody is disgusting. And I hope you rot in hell. And I hope you're scared every single day when you're in jail. Thank you, Judge, and thank you, guys.
Share your story. I'm just going to read a little bit of my victim statement, not all of it, but I'm a survivor of the Salon Meritage mass murder on October 12, 2011. Get the horrors happened that day. I was at work doing a client's hair when I heard the gunshots, not realizing what was happening. I thought it was balloons popping, a car backfiring. When all of a sudden, Gordon Gallego grabbed me on my right shoulder and dragged me into the employee bathroom. I didn't know what was going on. And he's telling me to be quiet. And he said, "It's Scott Dekraai." We're hearing the pop, pop, pop of the gunfire, crouched in a bathroom. Gordon and I are in a room like we could touch all 4 walls with no windows, nothing. We're hiding. We're standing on the toilet, flat against the wall, the 2 of us, for fear of the bullets that are coming through the door as he shoot Laura Webb Elodie. It was so scary and just terrifying. She begged. He shoots several times. Standing on the toilet, we feel the power of the gunfire against the door, the impact on the door as he's shooting Laura. Can you look at me? As we're hiding in this small bathrooms on top of a toilet. And she's begging for her life. "Please, Scott, don't do this. Don't do this." And you do it. You do it. The smell of the gunpowder to this day is so just stuck in my head, and it's staunchy, and there's just no windows in the back of the salon, and I don't know. It's just, it's awful.
I think that's all.
Comments with respect to sentencing committee?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Any comments with respect to sentencing committee?
Your Honor, the only thing, I can't obviously speak to the impact, and there's no need for me to do that. It's been done. I think the only area of discretion really that remains perhaps in this sentencing decision might be whether to run the sentences on the murder counts consecutive or concurrent. To the extent that's true, the people urge the court to impose those sentences consecutively. The impact that this man has imposed on individuals in the community, I think, can't be overstated. We have only small sampling here today. I think it's fair to say that the impact has touched hundreds, perhaps thousands of lives directly, meaning through direct family members or friends, because of the number of people that he killed, the number of people that witnessed the acts, and the number of people that those lives impacted directly in their daily relationships. I think it's, we don't even know the extent. But it's great, and the extent of it is obviously to inflict unimaginable pain that people will bear the rest of their lives. We're here today with only one option for sentence, and we accept that, but we urge the court to impose consecutive life terms.
Mr. Sanders, anything you want to say?
Thank you.
I'm going to invite Mr. Dekraai to speak, folks. I have denied him that opportunity for the last 5 years, and I said more than once that I would give him an opportunity to speak at some time. I don't know if he's going to speak or not. I've heard what he said this morning. If he chooses to speak, I ask you to refrain from comment. This is his chance, and it's the last chance he's ever going to have. I can think whatever you want, but this remains a court of law. And we have rules and expectations, and I hope and expect that everybody will comport themselves in an appropriate way. You can think anything you want. When we're done, you can say anything. If Mr. Dekraai wants to speak, this is his opportunity. Mr. Sanders, does your time want to address the board?
Yes.
This is the time.
Your Honor, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I've been waiting a long time to apologize, and I can't imagine the pain that I've caused. Hearing what I heard today is so dynamic, and I've put together a short speech, and I hope it conveys some sort of message to the people that I've heard. This is what I have to say. Almost 6 years of limited human contact and extended isolation gives a man a great deal of time to think about the despicable crime he has committed against innocent people. And the obvious pain I have caused has changed me forever. To the family members and loved ones of those who I have murdered, mere words of apology may never suffice. And please know that there is no penalty that the court could have imposed that compares to the burden I carry upon myself for what I did to your loved ones. Please believe me when I say that I wish I could turn back the hands of time and erase the horror of that terrible October day and replace it with the trademarked small-town peaceful fall day. I am very sorry that all of you had to wait so long for the finality in this case. I want to apologize to my son for failing him as a father and a role model. Son, words cannot express life is like without you. And to my loving wife who has stood by me for the last 9 years, and is still the reason I wake up each and every morning. In closing, I want to say I was wrong for what I did, and that peaceful resolution could have always been achieved. I am to blame for the total loss of self-control, and I'm 100% accountable for my actions. With extreme remorse and incredible regret, I truly am sorry.
Anything else from the defense, Mr. Sanders? As I said at the outset, I have received read and considered a probation report, including a supplement. I don't think it's necessary, but the law requires me to say that the defendant is obviously not eligible for probation. If he were, I wouldn't even consider probation in this case, in light of the horrendous nature of the crimes committed by him. This is the last time I will ever speak to you, Mr. Dekraai, I think. And I haven't spoken to you directly in well over 3 years, since May 2nd, 2014, which is the day that you entered your guilty pleas and I accepted them. I have seen some extraordinary events during my 40 years in this business. But I've never seen anything like what has unfolded in this courtroom on this case over the course of the past 5 years. I have never, in my 15th judge...
Well, that's it. He gets sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. Over 200 years. He'd have to live through 9 lives before he'll ever get out of prison. I'm William Wagener, hoping I gave you second thoughts. If you're angry about your split up with the other parent of your child, think again before you decide to kill anybody. Now we have a tape to close out. Thanks for watching.